Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. All right, listeners, we got a great episode ahead of us today. Today, we're joined by Yvette Martinez-Rea. She's the Chief Operating Officer at Yext, the SaaS platform powering digital presence for some of the biggest brands in the world. Yvette has over 20 years of operating experience across tech, gaming, media, and beauty. Before Yext, she was the VP of Sponsorships and Partnerships at Verizon. And before that, she served as CEO of ESL Gaming North America, one of the largest esports organizations on the planet. She's also held senior leadership roles at Yahoo, United Online, and Violet Gray. This is someone who has operated at the highest level across industries most people wouldn't even think to connect. But here's what makes today's conversation different. Yvette joined Yext during one of the most difficult chapters of her life. She'd recently lost her husband, and she made the decision to move into a role in company where she could be supported while she rebuilt. That experience shaped how she leads today, and she's open about it because she believes we don't make nearly enough space at work for the hard stuff people go through. Yvette, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today. Thank you.
Good. I wanted to check in. I know that's important.
Yeah.
I also am feeling good today. I have good energy. I'm so excited to have this conversation and dive in. I want to learn more about you. I want to learn more about your story. So let's just get into it. So I want to start here because you're the COO of Yext.
Yeah, don't promote me. Yeah,
No, I don't want to do that. We want to make sure we get that right. That's Chief Operating Officer.
that's right.
Let's talk about how you got into operations in the first place. And then I'm interested, what does being a COO at a software company entail for those listening who may not know?
Okay, so great question. So I was an English major with all intentions to go into law. And the economy was crappy when I graduated. And so I had to get a job and thought I would just go, work for a year and then go to law school. And then, of course, life happened. So I started in as actually an executive assistant and then fell into consulting and sales. And, I just sort of kept taking the next job. Found out pretty early that what I really liked to do was the project management type of work, the what I call the get shit done work, where you're driving teams to accomplish things. And so I just found myself moving more and more into those types of roles. And really what a COO does in any company is really you're sort of the chief get shit done officer. Your job is to monitor, manage, optimize, and connect the dots of the system of the company. So not any one function. You're going broad and wide to make sure that that set of functions is actually operating effectively to do whatever it is you're trying to do at a company at that time. And that's been true in, I think this is my third COO role. It's been true in every company. The nature of what you're trying to get done and how you're doing it changes depending on the industry and the size of the company, but fundamentally you're just connecting the dots.
What an articulate, efficient, and optimized way to describe that. That was beautifully said. That's amazing. You would expect that out of a great chief operations officer. And listen, I just want to draw some synergies real quick. One, I also graduated from college. I also applied to law school. And then I found out that I had an opportunity with a company that paid and had tuition reimbursement. And so I went and said, I'm going to go start my career and I'm going to go back to law school. And this is what I had been wanting to do forever. And then, of course, that never happened. I then graduated into project management at that company. So I also have that background about me. And then eventually I was the COO of our company, MSH, for many, many years before I took over as CEO. So there's some parallels there. I get it. And then I'm going to say one more thing. You called it get shit done. Here at MSH, we call it make shit happen. Same thing.
Nice. Same
That's it.
thing.
We got to execute. We got to
Yeah.
get things done.
We got to do another conversation one of these days about the difference between being a COO and a CEO, because I've been both too, and it's really fascinating how just changing that one letter in the title makes it a whole different role.
Well, just give me an abridged version. What do you think is one of the biggest differences? Because you were a CEO and now you're back to being a COO. So I'm just interested. What do you
Yeah.
think are some of the biggest thought differences?
Well, what I would tell you personally is the day that I was a COO at ESL and then became the CEO there. The day that changed, the day that letter changed in my title, people started to treat me completely differently. Suddenly,
Mm.
they wanted me to talk
So it was
vision and
less about you and your
strategy.
approach, right? It was more about how people were
Yeah,
receiving you.
it
Okay.
was really interesting, and all of a sudden, it was the PR team like being like, "You got to be on a stage, and you got to be interviewed, and you got to be in vision." And I like to be in the weeds. I like to be in the muck of the business. And suddenly they didn't want me there. They wanted me in this sort of different role. I learned a lot. It was great, but personally, I think it's and even now, I like being a number two. I like being the person that takes the CEO's vision and has to go ask the question, what has to be true to make this vision real? And then go get again in the mud of it to go figure that out. So
I think it's
that's
a
the difference.
really profound way that you put that. I think a lot of times you see a COO and a CFO are probably the two most likely positions to
Yeah.
ascend into a CEO role. And like you said, the COO, you're typically in the muck of it. You're in the tactics. And then,
Yeah.
yes, you're right. Everybody's expectation going forward is now we need you to be a little bit further up here and start doing things that are so, what you would
Yeah.
consider ancillary in a CEO role, branding for the company, face for the
Yeah.
company, strategic
Yeah.
vision for the company. And it does take a little bit of a mindset change. I know I struggled through that when I made that change, at
Yeah.
least initially, but I also kind of wanted to prove myself because I always felt
Mhm.
like, I was always seen as like the task rabbit, but you know what? I've had these strategic chops and now I've got this moment to
Yeah.
show it off, but it wasn't always an easy journey. There was some bumps in the road. And I totally agree with you. Probably the biggest difference is how people treat you or what
Right.
your words mean from an
Yeah.
impact perspective. So I'm glad we had that little aside. I do want to bring this up. So a lot of people are going through what you said a minute ago with the economy being crappy right
Mhm.
now. And like they had
Mhm.
these plans of what they wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, like whether you want to or not, you're being forced to kind of take a different path. What do you think helped you at that time with your mindset? What advice would you give anybody listening right now who's going through that? Because we probably have a lot.
So I have two kids in college. One is a junior, and he's starting to get anxious about this. He's reading the news, and he's not as many entry level jobs, blah blah blah. And he's also a sociology major. He doesn't have a STEM career laid out in front of him. And it's interesting because he's super anxious about it. And my attitude is like, it's all going to be fine. And I think it's all going to be fine because as long as you find yourself in a role where you can learn, you can build good people skills, you can build good other skills, like the path will unfold in front of you, right? And if you're a hard worker and you're a good networker and you're all of those things, ultimately there's going to be opportunity. I believe. I really believe that. So I guess my advice, at least to my own kid, is don't worry so much. Just get a job. And don't worry so much about if it's in the industry you thought you wanted it to be in, and then go from there. The doors will open once
Get
you're
in and
there.
get shit done. And that's great
Yeah.
advice. I had this conversation over the weekend with some friends too, because they were talking about, we all have younger kids, like 14. My kids start at 14. They're a little bit younger with these other people I was talking about. And they're like, I don't know what to do to advise my kids in this age of AI. And are we even going to have university? And what I told them was, all right, let me tell you what I do from an advice perspective. One, right? I don't think things are going to be as radically and fundamentally different in 5 to 10 years as everybody's predicting right now when it comes to AI. But the one thing I will tell you is that whatever you get into, just focus on I tell my kids to be top 5% in it, like lean
Yeah.
into it, right? Having that expertise in any area is ultimately going to always pay and always be valuable. Job design might change, right? What a
Yeah.
software engineer does today is almost definitely going to be different in 5 to 10 years. But having the knowledge of what happens at the base level of that job is going to make you valuable. I don't think that's going away. I really
I
don't. And
agree with
so
that.
I just say,
Yeah.
hey, listen, don't try to be too much of a versatile everything to everybody. Figure out what you care about and what you want to do, and then just lean into that because I think that's always going to be something that's good. But I also think the advice of get your foot in the door too. Don't be too
Yeah.
precious about like I want to
Yeah.
only do this path because it's always about coming in and you know what's always going to be valuable? People you can trust, people that you can rely on, people that execute, and people that you want to work with. And if you do those
Yes.
things, it doesn't matter the vocation. I think you're going to be good. So I think that's great
I would
advice.
tell you, I'm going to add two things. as someone who hires a lot of people, I really believe, especially for if you've got younger kids, put them in situations that require them to be uncomfortable and grow and learn, because
Totally.
that's just going to continue to be what they face in the workplace, is to be somebody that's get confronted with challenges, projects they don't know how to do, et cetera. If they develop that confidence and that skill of, I know how to how to live with the discomfort that I don't know how to do something and then learn it anyway,
Mm,
that's just gonna be invaluable, and that's not gonna slow down anytime soon. And then the other thing is, be good at working with other people, right? Have
mhm.
good people skills, and, like, as long as you've got those 2 things, I think everybody's gonna be fine.
Wrap it up. We just did a great pod that's going to
Yeah, that's it. We're
inform
done.
the youth of going for that is good stuff. All right, let's talk about the transition to Yext because we just talked about it a little bit, different roles, different industry.
Yeah.
That you also mentioned to me that at the time you were suffered a traumatic, unexpected loss that really had you reevaluating your career priorities. And I know there's other people listening to this who might be going through something like this or went through something
Yeah.
previously. So what are you comfortable sharing? Can you share that
Sure.
experience and how it led to where you are now?
Yes, absolutely. So the beginning of 22, my husband, was unexpectedly suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. When I say unexpectedly, there was not a big lead up of, signs that that's what was going on. Even more unexpectedly, he passed away 10 weeks after the diagnosis, which was way faster than we thought. So it rocked our world, and really blew it up. Didn't see it coming at all. And the kids were late high school at that point. I was in a really big job. I was luckily married to a man who really supported my career ambitions. And so I was in a big job at Verizon. It was a high pressure culture. It was a high pressure job. Um, and so suddenly I'm a single parent of these kids who've just lost their dad. I've lost my husband. Um, and to be clear, being part of a Fortune 50 company when something like that happens is in many ways a huge blessing, because the programs they have, the support systems, the resources, I mean, it's just, they have incredible assets really to help in that situation. So that was wonderful. The downside of being at a very high level position in that kind of culture is the pressure doesn't really let off. I mean, obviously, I took some time off, but it's a little bit like going into the pit in a Formula One race, right? Like, you don't want to be out of that race for very long because the stuff is just moving so fast and it's moving without you. Um, and so I tried to come back to work after a few months. I did come back to work after a few months, and what I recognized very quickly was that I just was not running at that speed anymore. I couldn't. I didn't have the energy, the capability, the interest, the motivation. And I was really struggling with, what do I do? I mean, I built this career. I've really, gotten at this point. And at that point, I had a conversation with my now CEO and friend, Mike Walrath, who had been a longtime friend and former colleague. And he had just come back to Yext as the CEO to transform that company. Much smaller company, industry I wasn't familiar with. And I talked to him about my struggles, and he said, "Why don't you come work for me?" I said, "I don't want a pity job." He said, "It's not a pity job." He said, "I'm transforming this company. I need help. And I can't offer you the same money. I can't offer you the same, scope. I can't offer you the same thing. But what I can offer you is a place where the board and I are going to give you time to grieve, to get the kids off to college, to really reset your life, and at the same time, give you an opportunity here to do what you do best." And so I joined Yext, and I joined as an individual contributor. So I went as somebody who had been managing big teams and huge budgets and big parts of companies, down to being an individual contributor. It was my initial role. And I spent the first few months, I was seeing all these things that needed to be done at the company. And I kept going back to Mike and saying, give me this, let me work on this. And he kept saying no. He actually kept saying no. He said, "You're not ready. You're not ready in that you can't do it." He said, "I can see the grief is still, it's like a vest, weighted vest on you." And he said, I'm not gonna let you turn work into the drug that numbs your grief. And he said, "When you're ready, there's plenty for you to do." So that was 3 years ago. And it's been one of the most generous things that anyone could have ever done for me and my kids.
For first off, I want to give you a lot of credit and admiration. I'm sure you hear a lot of things like this, especially after 2022, but for the strength that you have and especially with the timing of the kids and where you're at in your career, that's a really big deal. So that shouldn't go unnoticed. I also want to give credit to Mike.
Yeah,
It
right.
sounds like really rare leadership, right? Not only to bring you in and give you a safe space and give you an environment where, the expectations might have been not what they were at Verizon in terms of at least initially, but knowing that and saying, hey, listen, I know you can contribute here and do things, but you can do it at your pace and at your time. And so I give him a lot of credit for that. But then also I got to give him a lot of credit for, as you're asking for more, I got to be honest, I feel pretty strongly about my leadership skills, but if somebody was saying I'm ready for it and I wanted it and I needed it and I knew they could do it, I probably would not hold back and have that governor on me to say, I'm not going to let this be the drug to escape, right? Because I can see it in you. So incredible empathy, incredible
Yeah.
leadership. It sounds like you're
Oh,
very grateful you had somebody like that in your life at that time to be able to offer that because,
yes,
who knows? Many people most likely don't have that opportunity. So, wow.
absolutely.
Can
Very
I ask one
lucky.
thing? I want to go back to the time
Yeah.
of Verizon. I think everybody processes grief differently, right? It never
Mhm.
goes away, right? But I think everybody kind of handles it and deals with it differently, different timelines, different everything. Did you have a point where you realized that it wasn't just something that eventually was not going to you're going to wake up and you're going to be back to doing what you were doing at Verizon, that this was something that was going to be more, you know, untenable?
Yeah, I think, when something like that happens to you, at least then let me just speak to me. It forces you to reevaluate everything. And one of the things it forces you to reevaluate is how am I spending my time? What is the most valuable thing to me? How, my identity, et cetera. And I had a recognition at that point that I had for many years prioritized work and prioritized, the emails that had to be answered in 30 seconds and the travel and all of that. I had prioritized that over myself and my family to a large extent. And suddenly, that situation forced me to look at that clearly and say, do am I going to continue to trade off the money and the title and the prestige and the um for my family, and realizing that I couldn't and didn't want to anymore. And it's yeah, for me personally, that's the experience I had. And I think that as wonderful as so many people at Verizon were, and they really were, um, they themselves were going to continue to operate at a pace and an intensity that whether I was ready to or not, I was going to have to do, and that was gonna require sacrifices that I just couldn't make anymore.
Yeah, it's a big machine and it's not going to stop for
Yeah,
anything or anybody at any time. Like
yeah.
they'll do a good job of being supportive to a point, but then it just gets back to like, hey, we got to get back. And yeah, I'm amazed at that, and it doesn't shock me. I got to ask you, like, I have to imagine because when you were at Verizon and had that happen to somebody else, you also would have had to have that mentality to a degree. Hey, listen, I'm super empathetic and I understand, but you know, type of thing, right? I'm interested how the loss of your husband and the ensuing grief influenced how you now approach your work and you as a leader. How has that changed you? What did you learn from it?
Oh, well, so I had always thought of myself as a very human first leader. We all want to think that, right? That we're about our people and and I think I was. I think what I recognized though very quickly was that I had had people around me in my career who had experienced loss and that I had really not appreciated. Um, the I I had appreciated the immediate impact. I had not appreciated the sustained impact, the fundamental change and weight that they were gonna carry for a long time, and that I didn't, as a leader, create the right productive conversations and space and safety for them to be acknowledging. And one of the biggest ahas I think I had right away was we celebrate in our culture and in our organizations all the positive milestones, like yay, marriage and babies and like promotions and all these things. We don't often even verbalize anything about the bad stuff. So for me, the first thing it changed was me doing almost an audit of myself and how I led and conversations I had to say, am I creating the right space and safety for my team to tell me that something bad has happened or that they're struggling? And when that does happen, am I then being as productive as I can be to help them through that? Or am I just directing them to HR and being like, oh, you should talk to them about whatever leave program. Right? No, am I staying sustained and involved with them? And understanding that, it's not a one and done. Hey, I went to a funeral and now I'm back and I'm 100%.
Okay. So like super powerful, super resonant. I totally agree with you. Right. It almost would feel like, can we bring this up? Should I bring this up? Am I going to put
Yeah.
them into an emotional space? And then is that going to feel, not good or not productive or whatever it may be? And so it's a really great point, and it's something to think about. But I think I even am curious right now, like, okay, how do I handle that? What do I do? So you got the support that you needed and received that was important in the hardest of times. What would you recommend to organizations or leaders, tactically or conceptually, whatever it may be? What can they be doing differently to help with their employees who might be dealing with something like this, and not just do it in a, okay, couple weeks and then now back to business as usual? How do we make sure it's something that's a sustained practice?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is to sit and ask yourselves as a leadership team, as an organization, um, what is the room we create for grief and loss and difficult things in our company? Do we ever talk about it? Do we have people in the company who, have struggled? Do we even know that? Do we have programs that address it? Um, what do we even define as grief and loss? Because I think that's the other thing that I recognized. Everybody understands, okay, you lose a partner, you lose a child, you lose a parent. Those are pretty like known. Okay, yeah, we expect someone to have grief to take maybe some time. Do we talk about pet loss? Do we talk about people who have miscarriages, people who have a partner who's been laid off of a job? I mean, there's
I was right
so
about this.
many.
Like, there's so many levels to this, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you give them all the same? I don't know. So tell us,
No,
Michael. I'm super
I well,
interested to hear this.
I don't know that I have all the answers. What I do know is I think if you create a culture where your employees are allowed to talk about that stuff and to come and say, "Hey, I'm struggling," or "Hey, this has happened," um, you will find ways through it. But just even creating that dialogue and that openness and that ability. So what's changed for me is I talk about it a lot. I openly, when I started at Yext, every all hands I would do, or every one-on-one, I would say, here, part of my introduction is, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's what I've done. And I'm a widow. I lost my husband, and I think it was uncomfortable at first, but over time it got more and more comfortable. I still do it. I still will log on to an all hands meetings and say to everybody, hey guys, I'm having a low energy kind of blue day today. What's a song that you guys suggest might make my mood? What songs do you guys play when you woke up this morning and you're feeling kind of sad? And people participate and they get involved. And I will say, hey, today's September 11th. You know, that's a big. Our company's based in New York. There's a lot of people, today that
We have that
were
too. We have that too.
right.
Yeah.
And my commitment is just, let's just say it. Let's just say it. Even if it takes 30 seconds, we just say it. Today, there's a lot of us that are feeling sad and remembering a crappy thing. Um, and I think just that practice starts to give other people the opportunity to talk about it and say it. I would say the other thing I would recommend is that people start to look for, and that these do exist, is training for your leaders and your managers on how to manage individuals that are struggling, right? How do you manage and help someone who's having a hard time think about how to reorient their work, or how to manage a change to their schedule for some period of time, or what can you do? There are ways to do that, and I just think giving managers permission that they can do that, and that it isn't always again, punt to HR, because I think that's the common move, is like, oh, I don't know, something's going on, I'm uncomfortable, I'm gonna punt it to HR.
That's not great leadership. You don't outsource management or employee
And that's not to
engagement or
say
create.
HR isn't critical. They should
Sure.
be an important partner in that. But I
Sure.
just think when an employee gets told, like, hey, just go talk to them, it's not the greatest.
Okay. Now this is basically just like leadership curiosity questions. So I'm going to ask you this. We went, all of us, differing levels, of course, went through a very traumatic experience, right? 5 years ago, 6 years ago, right? There's still after effects of that. I would say one of the positives of that is that talking about well-being and talking about mental health
Yeah.
probably became a lot safer and a lot better and done in an organizational environment after that. I'm interested, what have you seen from that? What have you seen change from that? And then is there any way that you kind of look back on what was a very traumatic experience for a lot of people for many years in different ways? Like, how do you handle that from the COVID experience?
Yeah. I actually think in some ways Harder? Because we're so remote now. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes it's harder to pick up on the signals of someone's energy, someone's struggling, someone's, having a hard time. And so that bugs me as a manager that this is harder for me to feel if somebody's having a hard time, which means I think the onus is now on us to open the dialogue more, to more proactively ask the questions or so I think that's the thing that I see that's different is before you could kind of feel something that was going on, and now we're also removed. I do think I like the fact that we're the language of um, mental health and or resilience and or et cetera. All these things are now in the water. So I do think it helps in that sense that you can ask more openly, hey, do you need some time off? Like, do you need to go mentally reset? Do you need a mental health day? Like those kinds of things are now, you can, at least what I see in our company, you can say those things. You couldn't say those things 5 years ago in a company.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
How would you handle somebody that, because for some people it is a respite. Some people will come to work and they don't want to have, they like, I don't want to have this be something, I don't need anybody at work for this. I have like things in support at home. I want to come here and I want this to be a respite. Is that an overt conversation? Is that something if somebody came in like, okay.
If I could give you a couple of very practical things that I would recommend. When you're asking somebody how they are when they come back from, well, first, when a loss of any kind has happened, figure out how to show up. And I mean that as a company, as a leader, as a teammate. And what I mean by that is, however that makes sense. I had folks actually from Verizon and from other former companies flew across the country to my husband's funeral. They didn't know my husband. They flew to there and they were there in the rows. Now those people, I had vendors who did that. Partner who showed up. Now those people will have my loyalty forever. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but after that, I had people who would, randomly, check in months later. So they just showed up. So I would say find a way to show up to the people who've had loss. The second thing I would say is ask the question, how are you today? How are you right now? Don't ask, how are you? How are you is like, I don't know, like, how are you? That's too big. Narrow the questions. And then you can ask things like, what do you need from us right now? What do you need from me this week? Like really narrow it down into very like small chunks for the person that's going through something. And I say, do you want to talk about it? Do you want to tell me the story? I can tell you, I've yet to hear a person who's lost someone who doesn't want to talk about that person. They want to. They want to say their name. They want to ask them questions. When they do talk about it, don't change the subject. It's one of the biggest gifts you can give someone who's lost. And by the way, pets, same thing as pets. Show me a picture. Can I see a picture? A very kind thing you can do is mark the date. If somebody, somebody lost their, person on, March 15th, put it in the calendar for a year from now.
I was just thinking about that. Like, I'm thinking about like, how would I sustain and follow up and check in on somebody? Because they might, they're thinking about that date.
And all you have to do is like, hey, checking in on you today. That's it. You don't have to make it a bigger deal than that. So it's a lot of that little stuff, I think. And then also once you see someone struggling, or let me say it this way, when something like this happens, one of the best things you can do as a manager is to sit and say to that person, I know you don't know how you're going to be in 2 weeks or 2 months. This is going to go up and down in terms of the effect it has on you. Here is what I would like for you to do to signal to me if you're struggling and you need support. Just send me a text message in the morning that says, hard day today. Send me a one-on-one request that says, need help or support, whatever, like give them a way that they can signal to you without having to sort of signal to everybody else that they're struggling and they need a little help. And I think that's a great gift. And even knowing you have that way to signal it often just is all you need. You just need to know that you have it, not even use it.
Listen, I mean, nothing makes up for the loss. Nothing changes it. But I will tell you the perspective that I can tell you have gained from it and what it's done for you as a person, a human, and as a leader. I'm really amazed by the leadership at Yext. If the leadership is any indicator, this company is going to be, I want to buy stock right now. Like I hope your employees realize what they have in you all, and you're doing.
It's a very special place. The culture is a very special place. And I would say I feel very grateful not only to have joined, but to now be part of carrying it forward because it is a special place.
That's fantastic. All right, listen, there's no great segue for this. I do want to talk about talent. I do want to talk about hiring, but I appreciate you so much for sharing everything that you did. Very poignant. Super interested to hear. Okay, like we just talked about culture a little bit. We talked about, and I bet you're a great caretaker of what that is. And that big part of that is who are we letting into the organization to be part of this culture? So super interested to hear from your perspective. Let's start here. Core hiring philosophy, people that you bring into the organization, people you bring onto your team, what are you looking for? How do you approach it?
It's the same thing I look for when I'm dating. And I will say that over and over and over again. There's only one word that matters. My girlfriends wanted to start setting me up. I said, you can set me up. I will go out with anyone sight unseen if they possess this one quality. And they said, oh my gosh, what is it? Is it intelligence? Is it that? It's one word, and it's curiosity. Because curiosity,
I look for that in hiring, but let's talk about it from a dating perspective too. Wow.
Well, because it's in both hiring and in dating. It solves for a lot of things. If somebody is a highly curious person to the point that you would describe them as curious and having high curiosity, they are probably easy to get along with because they probably like people. They've probably exposed themselves to lots of different opportunities, places, types of jobs, projects. They're well-rounded. They probably are a pretty good listener. Probably ask good questions, good conversationalists. Probably a good listener, right? Because they want to learn. They're curious. They're probably a good learner. They grow up, they look for opportunities to grow, which probably means they have their shit together. So I just think when you solve for curious, it's very unusual, I think, that you don't get all the other good stuff. Now, it is possible to find a really curious person who's lazy and doesn't do anything with that. That's I've rarely found that, but you can find that. But no, I think if you start with curious, you get a lot of other benefit.
That's great. It's funny you say this. So in college, for my wife, obviously, I did a lot of dating. And my whole thought process was, I'll date anybody from the valedictorian to somebody you like, I don't know, just, and let's just say a not good situation. Usually the analogy I use is not a really good one, but I'll date anyone. I'll have an open mind about it. Okay. If there was some sort of attraction, then I go on a date and we can figure things out. But my whole game plan on the date was I just asked a lot of questions. And so I would go on the date and I would be like, tell me about this. Okay, what about that? And I would ask a follow-up and I would do all these different things. And my whole game plan there was they would go home and be like, how was the date with Oz? And be like, oh, we had the best conversation ever. And we probably didn't talk a lot about me at all. It was more just me that number one, I do think I'm naturally interested in people and want to learn about how they think and who they are. But also I know, people do like to if you can pull them out of the shell, they like to talk about themselves. That's one of everybody's favorite topics and subjects. And so I guess that's why I'm now interviewing people on podcasts and things like that.
I was about to say, you're still doing it. You're still asking people a bunch of questions. Yes. I think that's also, so that's probably my number one criteria. If I had to,
how do you determine that in an interview? Like what, are you asking them, what are you curious about? Or are they asking questions? How are you determining it?
Well, so just to be fair, if somebody's getting all the way to me, they've already been through the do they have the skills? Do they have the experience? Do they have, right? So I don't have to do any of that stuff, right? But by the time they've gotten to me, I know they can do the job, the actual core job, which gives me the benefit of being able to just chat with them more almost like dating, right? I'm a big believer, and I actually say, we've got 45 minutes. Let's start with what you want to know. And that very quickly will tell me, right? What kinds of questions are they asking me? Are they, when I answer, are they following up? Are they is there something that I say that they pick up on that then they take with it? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I just ask a lot of questions about, it varies, but it can be everything from like, what's the last piece of content that like you just couldn't stop thinking about? Or, what's the last, really random, connection you made at work that helped you unlock something, like idea connection? Where, because I'm really looking at, in that case, I'm really looking for patterns. Are you somebody who like is open to finding answers from different places and different things? But that's really it. It's just really, it's that.
Oh, we're going to come back to the content one in a minute because I like the way you frame that. And that's what a question I asked a little bit, but I will come back to that. Tell me about a memorable interview experience, right? You have one, good, bad, don't have to name names, but just these are sometimes the best stories we get on this podcast.
So we just hired someone. She actually just started, and it wasn't her. It was actually the other person that was up for the job. And it was really interesting because, as I said, everybody else interviews these people before they get to me. And so I get the the greenhouse, report before I interview someone. And I have a rule. I do not look at the resume, and I do not go to LinkedIn. So I want to come in as fresh as I can, but I do kind of glance to see like, okay, how, what are the strengths and things that people have called. And this person that we didn't end up hiring had been rated pretty highly. And so I was like, okay, this is going to be good. And he, he didn't have questions for me, which at first I was like, okay, well, that's a flag for me. But then when I asked him to tell me about himself, because I said, look, I haven't looked at your resume. I know you can do the job because you've gotten to me, but like, tell me what I should know. He did that thing, which this is a senior person. He did that thing that you do when you're early in your career where you start going like line by line by line, like as almost like you're reading your resume to somebody. And he kept going to the point where I put the timer on the phone. And I just decided I would just sit there and see how long he would go.
What do you
And
do?
we were
How long?
at least 20 minutes before I finally was like, this is done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't ask any questions. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't giving him any signal back. Anyway, so that was my latest one where immediately, I ended the interview early and, texted the team. And I was like, I don't know what you guys saw, but this isn't
it.
this isn't the
The
guy.
interesting is that, so I coach, one of the things that we do is we're consultative with our clients around best hiring practices, how to manage a great interview process, how to give feedback, how to drive requirements. But one of the things underrated we do that doesn't have a like A to B financial impact is we are super consultative with our candidates, especially as they're going into an interview process.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're dealing with people who've been laid off, out of work, desperately want another job for whatever reason. It's a very vulnerable time and you're trying to help them, right? And so one of the things I talk about with candidates all the time is you got to keep a beat in your head. Like, when you give an answer, like you might go like a minute 30, 2 minutes, maybe, and then ask, hey, did I answer your question? I want to make sure I'm not going too far. Like it shows a level of self-awareness because I've been in those interviews too, where it's just like, okay, you open it up. And then like you said, like 20 minutes later, like, and sometimes people get nervous and I'm sure with your level of role, it happens. I had somebody the other day, same thing, was like senior person, but like they were nervous and they admitted it. And I understand that. And I try to set an environment where they can be comfortable. But you gotta make sure that you know what's going on in your head and you're coming to an end thought. Because a lot of times some people start a sentence and then who knows where it's going to end, right? Sometimes. So that's a big part of interviewing is
I
reading
agree.
your room, reading the audience. So I appreciate you sharing that. What about if I ask you the best hire you've ever made? Does anybody come to mind? And you don't have to name names because I want a lot of people to think that they're the best hire you've ever made. But like just interested, like what did you see in the interview that ultimately translated into them being a great hire?
I will tell you, I'm going to answer it a little differently. I really pride myself on finding talent in an organization and pulling them out into a different part of the organization, usually something they haven't done at all, something very different, and seeing them thrive. So it's not really about the hiring
Okay. Give me the best
external.
story in that. I love that.
And so I've got examples in every company I've been in, but one person in particular, really fantastic. And I was watching them in their role and just seeing how great they were, but they were a individual contributor. They didn't get a lot of visibility in the organization, but I was watching just their skills, their collaboration skills, their problem solving skills, everything. And I at some point, over drinks said, I'm going to make you a COO. So I'm just kidding. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, you have all the skills. And they were like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And I'm like, okay, well, you can. And I'm not giving you a choice. I'm going to start to move you into some other stuff. And that person is now running, multiple teams, driving a ton of value. And for me, it's one of those moments where you just watch it. Like you just watch this flower bloom that is going to bloom if you just put it in like the right spot in the garden, and watching their confidence as they go, oh, I can do this. I can add value at a whole different level than I was adding. That stuff just fires me up all day long. And there's lots of there's another guy that is a industrial engineer by training and was in this role, and I had all these problems in this other part of the organization, and I was like, I need that kind of brain in this part of the organization. And they said, I don't understand any of that. I was like, you'll learn that. That team doesn't have what you've got. And so again, super thriving, super energized because they're learning something different. That's my favorite stuff.
That's why we do this show, because I want to see what great leaders see that others don't. How do they unearth those things? And that was a fantastic story. And what I love about that? Sometimes, the best people for the role that you're looking to hire for are going to be people already in your organization doing something else.
I guarantee you almost always they're already there. Almost always they are in your organization already. And the beauty of that is they know your organization. They have relationships in your organization. Like, you just need to be willing to consider that just because they don't have X degree or they didn't come up X stack, that they can add it.
Dig it. Great advice. All right. What about when you've missed? We all miss from time to time. So is there something that you had to learn, or is there a theme or something that when you miss like this?
So I'm a big believer in slow hire, fast fire. And what I mean by that is take your time, really understanding the role that you want, what you need, what it's going to take to be successful, the environment around that role. Like, really, really understand that, and then really, really, look at a lot of options and things before you make that decision. But then very quickly, like, you want to set the person up for success, you want to onboard them effectively, all that stuff. But very quickly start watching for signs that flower isn't going to grow in that place, and then and make some decisions quickly on that. So I would say when I haven't done that is when I have found myself, when I have sort of been desperate and thought, oh, I have to fill this tomorrow because everything's going to fall apart. Inevitably, I make the wrong choice.
Number one thing I hear is that you had the headcount, you might lose the headcount, you got to move fast, somebody drowning in the job, you're doing the job yourself. Like, there's a bunch of reasons why you force and rationalize decisions that even if in your subconscious, is not right, to make it right. And then I'll tell you the other thing I've heard and I've learned, and this is a very hard thing to do, but within 30 days.
Oh, right? That's what, exactly.
Within 30 days.
When you put it off, either dealing with it, like giving feedback and coaching, or just, just not, it never gets better. It doesn't get better. There's never a better situation.
And you're not doing anybody any favors. Yeah, it's hard. Hard conversations are tough. Conflict can be tough. Telling something that somebody doesn't want to hear, that's not ever easy. It doesn't matter. You're doing yourself a disservice. More importantly, you're doing them a disservice. You really are.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. Okay. Couple of different things I want to wrap up with here. Sure. So first one I'm going to ask you is, what is your most unique use case for AI? How are you using AI that maybe no one else is? Give us anything.
Oh, wow. It's funny. I was just talking to somebody on the team this morning about how I have homework assignments that like, actually my AI transformation guy in the company, I make him give me homework assignments every day, so that I can get better and actually get learning. I'm trying to think of something unique that I'm doing to use it for. I don't know that I have anything unique use case, but I will tell you that everybody at the company knows that I call AI my boyfriend Chad. Because I'm like, why did they name it Chat GPT? Why isn't it Chad GPT? And so they will now say to me, did you ask Chad this question? And so Chad and I are a thing at the company. And so I will give you, that's my unique thing that I've
Chad's not like overly sycophantic though. And like, oh, great idea, Yvette. That's amazing.
I have picked a voice I like. Chad and I are like, so the team is always like, hey, but maybe Chad can give you an answer.
Here's a tip I got for people with AI. Go into your global rules and use that. Go ahead and say, I don't want you to sugarcoat things. I want you to red team me when I bring up ideas, challenge my thoughts, give me constructive feedback, right? And if you do that, the system will do exactly what you ask it to do. And now you can actually have a better, if you're looking for a thought partner around.
I agree. The thought
Okay.
partner thing is awesome.
Yes.
That's probably my favorite way to use it today is to say, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. Here's my thoughts. Help me make it better. It's great.
Love that. What's a piece of content you can't stop thinking about?
So I'm trying to think of the last sort of few days. Honestly, probably the piece of content that that I've been thinking about is a book I just finished. It's called The Friday Afternoon Club. It's a memoir by a guy named Griffin Dunne, who was Joan Didion's nephew, and his dad was a big writer. It sounds weird, but again, I look for patterns and connections, and this is really a book about, call it kind of old New York, old Hollywood families, and his experience in them. But in it, there was a lot about how grief and loss used to be a much more collective community sort of thing, right? Somebody died in Hollywood, like the whole town would show up or the whole thing. And so and just bringing it back to the part of the conversation, it made me realize that, I don't know if it's a since COVID thing, I don't know what it is, but we don't show up kind of in the same way for each other. And it made me realize that, like, okay, I'm going to double down again on when these kinds of things are happening in the lives of the people around me. Like, I want to go back to that kind of time period where you just dropped everything and you showed up.
Love that. Can I give one?
Yeah, please.
And I would have said this no matter what, but I think it's especially poignant based on what we're talking about right now. So last night I watched, there's a new Netflix documentary about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it's called
Love them.
Our Brother Hillel. And what I did not know, this is about this is like, leads up right to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, their big album that really had them take off. What I did not know is that there was a guy, their guitarist, who they led them that whole way, was like a close friend of Anthony Kiedis and Flea growing up. And he actually, I don't want to give away the ending, but obviously he overdosed, right? And they talk about this journey and dealing with this grief. And there's so many different things in there that I think, you will watch that and you'll hear about the grief and the way they process it and everything that was going on. Highly recommend. Definitely check it out. It gave me a whole new side. I love them. They're a great band. Saw them in concert a year ago.
Yeah.
But my gosh, this told me a whole different side. I think you'll really love it. I recommend you check it out.
Thank you. I absolutely will.
You got it. You gotta let me know what you think. All right, last question.
Yeah.
What is some advice that you would give 20-year-old Yvette that you didn't know then, but that you know now?
I wish that I had figured out earlier in my life that I didn't have to be an A student. And what I mean by that, it's funny because Mike and I talk about it here at work a lot, is that we see so many A students. And what we mean by that is people who feel like they have to show up with the answer. Like they have to study as hard as they can over here in the corner, and they have to show up with the answer. It has to be right. I think that work is way more fun and way more satisfying when you're collaborative and open and co-developing the answers. And part of that is being willing to say that you don't have it. Like you yourself don't have the perfect answer. And I spent a lot of my career kind of burning a lot of fuel and by the way, even when I did that, I didn't necessarily have the answer, but like I thought that was what I needed to do. And I look back and I'm like, gosh, I think it would have been more fun and maybe even more successful if I'd been more open to not having to show up and be right on the first try, right? And so I don't know.
I think it's great advice. Sometimes I look back because I was always a student that can show up and I'll get a B.
Yeah.
And I probably could have put in a little more work and gotten A's. And sometimes I think about that in high school because I went to the University of Arizona. Amazing school. Love it. Then maybe I could have gone to Stanford. Maybe everything's different. I don't know. Certainly in college though, I went in consciously thinking this is as much about my academic gain as it is my social gain and my understanding of myself and who I am as a human being. And I took that approach and I do not regret that even a little bit. I got the degree and there was my freshman year was a little bit tougher and I had to build back up and that was okay. I didn't even know who my academic advisor was my first year and a half. Yeah. But ultimately, like the amount of work I put into myself, the amount of work I put in the relationship that I ended up building there and the things that I learned, less about the grade, more about like how I took in the information and I used it. Yeah. makes me feel like more of a whole person and I got more of a whole experience. So I love what you said there. I think it
Yeah.
totally makes sense. I don't know that, I've got my oldest daughter is like a high achiever when it comes to academically. And then I got 2 other daughters and a son that we'll see where their path is going. But I so agree with you. It's not about showing up and needing to have the right answer. It's not about, I took the
Yeah.
test and I got it. Like, you know what? Life is a different type of test. It's not a written
I
one. It's
agree.
not an SAT. It's not an ACT. And ultimately, I don't know there's that high of a correlation between, the great test taker and the great, person that has the professional success that they want, right? So I think that's good
agree.
advice. I think that's awesome. Yvette, this was so
been a
chock
pleasure.
full of so much. It's been a total pleasure. I knew the conversation was going to be good going in, but it totally surpassed my expectations. I
I
appreciate
feel
you.
like we're friends now, so we'll have to be more.
If I'm in LA, that's where you're at, right? Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm in LA.
When I'm in LA, I'm going to hit you up. And then certainly you're here in South Florida, you let me know. I'll definitely be in touch. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate it.